It cannot be. Because student behavior, there's not just students in the classroom. So how do we maintain and manage as a class and as a system, an ecosystem of healthy support and moving things forward? So the variability of judgment in the infraction in and of itself is something that we must talk about. So as we look at equity, equity does do a couple of things. What do we need to fix? What do we need to tighten up on? What do we need to kind of play down because it's not a factor? So equity is that double-headed wrench there. How do we fix things? How do we move things forward? How do we address the issues, all the while not breaking the system? All the while being fair to the kids we serve. Perpetual subjectivity, continuing or enduring forever. The perpetual subjectivity behind deliberate disruption, and this is not John talking, this is the data, is something we have to address. It refers to how someone's judgment is shaped by personal opinions and feelings instead of outside influence. Subjectivity is partially responsible for why one person loves an abstract painting while another person hates it. The subjectivity in which we all have, we have to address, and that is very tricky. That is very hard. That is not to say there aren't things that come in with the student that we don't know about. There's not to say that there's things that come in with the teacher that we don't know about. But all that is collected. All of that is a part of it. So when we talk about this judgment and what shapes by personal opinions, it is unfair to say that the teacher is not part of that judgment. It is unfair to say that the student is not part of that judgment. It's a community within that classroom that really impacts how we handle and manage students. Here's some of the strategic plan alignments as relates to my work and looking at the code of conduct. Provide equitable access, eliminate achievement, learning, and opportunity gaps. Improve culture and climate, and develop leaders. I intentionally put develop leaders on there because we're developing student leaders and our teachers are leaders. So all of that in the room is things that we have to look at. Improve the culture and climate. You've heard from every presentation from Dr. Averett to Dr. Dawson to Dr. Hargens that this culture and climate piece is very, very important. No one is saying that we need to dismiss poor behavior, and no one is saying that we are going to let children run amok. But we have to have a culture and climate that understands and manages those behaviors. Again, understanding that students don't learn if they're not in class. Eliminate achievement and learning and opportunity gaps. That only can happen in the classroom. Our job is to be in the classroom. So you're not learning if you're not in the classroom. That's as simple as 1 + 1. We have to keep them in the classroom. And provide equitable access. The code of conduct is actually a part of equity in the sense that it has to be what the student needs. It has to be what the teacher needs. So as we move this forward, the code of conduct should be understood and used by all. We've already seen data from, I think it was Dr. Dawson's presentation, maybe Dr. Averett's, where some students still don't understand the punishments they're receiving or the expectations. Disruptive behavior resulting in suspensions. Black students suspended 12.5% more often than white students for disruptive behavior. Black females have the highest rate of suspension for disruptive behavior, resulting in these suspensions. And again, remember, disruptive behavior, and I think it was Dr. Vanderhaar at the Code of Conduct showed there was a kid that got in trouble for chewing gum, qualified under disruptive behavior, to a child that got suspended for throwing a desk, all under the disruptive behavior category. Also in a presentation I did Friday or Thursday, 6% of disruptive behavior was just tagged and there was no narrative at all. Total disruptive behavior events. 16,802, 5,497. So the subjectivity to which disruptive behavior is distributed seems to be a bit off balance. The subjectivity to which disruptive behavior is distributed seems to be a bit off balance. We are talking about subjectivity. This presentation is about subjectivity. And when at your table talks, I'm sure more conversation about that will come up. And I am sorry, I don't know where this stopped and started, Dina, but I'll check. Total suspensions for disruptive behavior. So, I'll hand this to Jonathan. So, as we talk about disruptive behavior, the committee has come up with an idea to tier it. One of the questions in conversation, I'm going back to teacher mode, is tiering it how do we get around, how does tiering stop it from being subjective? How does tiering something that is subjective, proven by data, followed by the benchmark districts that we just presented on, followed by the things that we know about our disruptive behavior and our own data, how will tiering it keep it from being subjective? So at your tables, that's one of the questions I would like for you to look at. Because again, we kind of have right now, the committee has worked on tiering it. But if you recall, for some of you all that have watched the news, I've said there's a suggestion to take it completely off. And how do we end up with not having this kind of subjectivity, which none of us want, unless there's some in the room that think this is okay? How do we move forward not being subjective by putting it in buckets? Again, going back to, I've done this practice with my own staff. I've done this practice with principals. We kind of did it a little bit. Our facilitators did it. And it was probably the most difficult discussion we had in the Code of Conduct. So the disruptive behavior data is this. I look forward to the conversation. But that's something that we need to think about as we move forward. Thank you.
So go back into your small groups and 15 minutes of conversation, and make sure that you're recording the discussion. Thank you. Hi, all. We're going to come back now and hear from a couple of tables. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. So is there a table that would like to start off and share a little bit about your conversation? Anybody want to raise your hand and share out a little bit? Oh, here comes somebody.
Some of our takeaways came from just the mere fact of the fact that discussion needs to happen. The fact that it is very uncomfortable for people to talk about the elephant in the room, but it has to be talked about. The fact that you can be in one school and have the student who is tapping the pencil and that be something that is handled totally different in another school, you know, over suspension. You can have a student in one school who comes out of uniform and they can be, that situation can be handled totally different from school A to school B. I think that as a district, we need to be able to open up the dialogue and the discussion amongst schools to talk about the difficult conversations. It makes people uncomfortable because we have to look at ourselves and we have to often recognize the subjectivity that we come with because of our experiences. And until we look at ourselves as adults, as a principal, I can't move my staff to change their mindset if I haven't looked at the own biases that I come with within myself. So again, I think it's just important for us to acknowledge that we have to have the conversations even when they are uncomfortable.
Okay, some of the things we discussed is we need to make sure that our teachers have strategies in place, skills to cope with the disruptive behavior, such as a cool-off and recovery period for the student. It was suggested that we have different levels of support and understanding, and also we could make it part of the curriculum. Like some of the behaviors need to be addressed as part of our curriculum as well. A really great quote from one of our table participants said, "You have to decide if you want the child punished or if you want the behavior changed. What is it we're really trying to do?" And we need a proactive behavior management culture, not reactive. Give them the resources to deal with their problem, which they may not be able to meet your expectations because they don't have the resources, social skills, what have you, to deal with their problem. Are we still trying to fit kids into a box that doesn't exist anymore? One of the examples that we came up with was like a medical model, in order to triage the situation. And again, are we suppressing symptoms or are we truly solving the problem? But the mention of tapping the pencil, one of the things that could be is not deliberate disruption, but actually a sign of a disability. So again, triaging the situation to determine what the child needs. And about the tiered, deliberate disruption into tiers, what I'm noticing in the community is that even though deliberate disruption may be subjective and it needs to be removed completely, because we've got a knee-jerk reaction from the community, we're about to get nothing out of that category, and we do know something needs to change. So even if we tier it for a year and allow teachers to participate in the process of coming back a year from now and saying, we tiered these deliberate disruptions into these three categories, at least now we've separated them and given them the ability to be handled appropriately, and then make it a learning experience for teachers and staff to say, okay, now of these three different tiers, how could we have coded this? Because deliberate disruption is being treated in some cases as if it's just an other category, because those choices exist in the code, and instead of putting it in deliberate disruption, we could actually put it in the appropriate code that it belongs to. But we're not, we're about to end up just shelving this for another year. So if we can say, okay, yes, let's keep the tiers, at least we're getting somewhere, and then a year from now we can come back and say, could we now take these three different tiers and put them in the right categories in the code?
Thanks. So one more, right here.
Sorry to be the killjoys. We have real questions as to whether it's possible to eliminate subjectivity and whether that's really effective. And the example that I gave, as a matter of fact, was a student who they were in a conflict. I took the item they were in conflict over. One of the students reached out and hit me as she was trying to grab the item. There was another adult in the room who apparently immediately reported that I had been assaulted. And in the eyes of the law, yes, technically it probably was a battery, but I didn't feel assaulted. And so administration swooped in, of course, quite concerned, and said, "We understand a student hit you." I said, "I didn't feel hit. Felt like my kids fighting over something. I was okay." But that's subjectivity. So I don't think you're going to be able to have lockstep application because some of this is necessarily affected by your past experience with a student, your past experience in life, as one of the people, your day, how your day has gone. So although I think it's wonderful to have guidelines, our table didn't really feel that we necessarily could have absolute lack of subjectivity. Somebody suggested we needed to operationalize, is that the right word? So that we had guidelines, but that it was perhaps unrealistic to say we're going to have an absolutely lockstep application without any subjectivity because we're people.
Thank you very much. The final portion of our meeting is an opportunity to hear from principals that are going to talk a little bit about how they construct a system and a culture in their schools that helps students succeed. And so I'm going to invite Bryce Hibbert from Southern High School, Kathy Gibbs from Knight Middle School, and Joe Wood from Indian Trail to come up and just share 5 minutes each of what's going on, and then there'll be an opportunity for you all to ask some questions from them. So we have, experienced principals that can kind of share their insights.
Awesome, thank you. At Southern, taken over 5 years ago at a priority school, the first thing I noticed was really a lack of purpose. Students didn't really know why they were coming to school. And until you can get them to know what they need, then there's no way to get them to buy in. So the first thing we did was talk about purpose, and we did that with the staff as well. So if you walk into Southern, which I invite you to do, there are 3 circles that drive our work. The state talked about 3 rocks. I don't like rocks. They don't fit together. Played with them as a kid. But I'm a math guy, so a Venn diagram with circles fitting together made sense to me, with student achievement all about the middle, that student. So the supports we have then are teaching our teachers to be learning leaders within the classroom because it's all about learning. The top was a PLC work, and then the right circle down at the bottom was me. I said, I'll take over the culture piece, getting the kids to own their learning. So we started there, trying to talk about what does it take to come and be a student. And then I had this idea of, well, there's cussing in the halls. I don't like that. I don't swear myself. I watch kids at the cafeteria throw their trash down. Guys, this is our house. So if you come to Southern, you'll see across the whole building, it says our house. I talk about Southern less as Southern High School as I do our house. Our kids talk about our house. So at our house, there are behaviors. So our culture is based on 3 legs. The first leg is PBIS, which you heard about. We have one of the strongest teams in the district, not told by me, but by folks that are leading that training and come in with our team. And our team meets every month. They talk about data, we talk about situations, and we train our teachers. That's one of the biggest things. We talked about our teachers, we train them to not escalate, but to de-escalate. And a lot of little disruptive behaviors turn into suspensions because the kid didn't know where to draw the line, and maybe the teacher didn't know where to draw the line. And knowing where to draw the line takes me to the next leg, and that's cowboy ethics. So this last year, we bought a book for every student and every staff member, and there are 10 principles within cowboy ethics that I ask kids and staff and myself. Mine is, if you make a promise, keep it. So there are 10 principles. Every kid chose one. Every staff member chose one. Because PBIS does a great job of setting expectations, and we developed lessons. And so the first day of school, and I was really proud of the staff, first day of school, everybody stopped for the first 10 minutes, and we taught, what are the classroom expectations? What are bus expectations? What are hallway expectations? What are expectations in the commons area? And every kid in the school saw those. So when you see a survey and 50% of the kids say that they don't know what the expectations are and they don't know what the consequences are, they're not Southern students. Unless they're just the kid that wrote disagree on every one of them, which happens. So back to cowboy ethics, every kid has this. So I love that because that's a replacement behavior. You see, we can set expectations and we can have all these ideas and these rules, but if kids aren't learning that somewhere, where are they going to get it? So they're going to get it at our house, and we're going to talk about replacement behaviors that you can live with courage, you can know where to draw the line, you can make a promise and keep it. And so those principles we talk about in advisory with our students every week. And they have lessons to go through those. I'm really excited, Alicia, Dr. Averett, if we've gotten the hero thing done, because that's the third leg. Because we talk a lot about being proactive and being more positive. Here's what I told the kids at our awards ceremonies on Friday. How am I doing on time? So, at our awards ceremony, kids are extrinsic. We are extrinsic. We are motivated from stuff from the outside. Millennials aren't going to do it unless they know what they're getting for it. Okay, so old people like me, I went to the alumni, guys that graduated in the 50s and 60s are scratching their head. You're supposed to come to school. You're supposed to get good grades. You're supposed to act respectful. Yes, that's true. That's why I was brought up. Kids today, no. They have to be taught those things. So then, if we can set up a point system, so we're going to have tri-bucks. If you want to know more about our process, I'd be glad to share it with you. But tri-bucks are points that kids are going to receive for doing positive things, because research says 20% are going to do right, 20% aren't. I want to get the 60% leaning more this way. What could our house be like? Thanks. That's us.
Hi, I'm Kathy Gibbs. I'm the principal of Knight Middle School. The transformation that's taken place at Knight Middle School over the last 2 years has been a complete and total cultural change. 2 years ago, at the end of the 13-14 school year, Knight had 728 days of suspension and K-Prep results that showed that 42% of our students were novice in reading and 36% in math. For that same school year, our proficient students in reading and math were 28% and 21% respectively. If you juxtapose that to where we are now, for this school year, we've had 155 days of suspension. So let that sink in for a minute, okay? 155 days of suspension. That's been reduced by 573 days. That's an 80% reduction in suspensions. But I don't want you to think about that in terms of a number. Think about that in terms of students in the classroom learning as opposed to just a number, okay? Because that's where it really matters, is getting those kids into the classroom, which is what we've been talking about here today. So think about that as opportunities for learning experiences for our students. At the beginning of this year, we started out, and we do a lot of hashtagging at Knight Middle School, and we started out and we said that we were going to be hashtag 60 and 16. So what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean? If you don't know, Knight Middle School is a priority school. Okay, we've made AMO twice. This year is our year to get out. But that's not good enough for our students anymore at Knight Middle School. Not at all. At Knight Middle School, we're ready to make that jump from being a priority school to a proficient school. And we've got the data that says we're going to do it. But more important than the data, we've got the students that know that this is going to happen this year. And so how has that taken place? One student, and I'm going to call him CC, so just for confidentiality reasons, but when he came to Knight Middle School in 13-14, CC and I talk a lot. And in 13-14, when he got to Knight, CC talks about his neighborhood being filled with gangs and drugs. And at 10 years old, CC started running with the gangs and started having an involvement with the drug culture. As a 6th grader, he had 15 days of suspension, but then he went to Kennedy Metro, and he spent the rest of the year at Kennedy Metro. As a 7th grader, he came back to Knight Middle School. CC wasn't ready to, he didn't trust us enough to allow us to let the changes happen. He didn't trust the changes, and he certainly didn't trust the adults that were leading the changes. So CC ended up with more suspensions, and he ended up back at Kennedy Metro, and he actually did some time at JCYC as well. He came back to Knight last year with 9 weeks left to go in the school year, 9 weeks. During that time, we put him in our transition center to get him caught up with credit recovery, and that's where we began to teach him what does it look like and sound like to be a student at Knight Middle School. And I use those words really deliberately because every single day we talk about what does it look like and what does it sound like to be a student at Knight Middle School. It is so clearly defined. We talk about walking our hallways with a purpose. That's some more common language that we use every single day at Knight Middle School. Our kids understand what it looks like and sounds like to identify the theme of a passage in their reading class. Okay, so looks like, sounds like, making sure that our kids know that. And time again, our kids have risen to meet those high expectations that we're setting at Knight Middle School. In 13-14, I started at Knight Middle School at the end of that school year. By the end of the school year, we essentially restaffed. By the end of 13-14, we had 20 of 28 teachers that got a transfer, requested a transfer and got a transfer. So over the past 2 years, we did a restaffing. That first year, so the 14-15 school year, we had 20 new teachers, 17 of which were completely and totally inexperienced. They were K-tippers or alt-certers. So it was imperative upon us that we establish what does it look like and sound like to be a teacher at Knight Middle School. So all of those things that Bryce was talking about, that proactiveness, you know, you have to teach that. Because if you've never taught before and a kid shows the behavior in your classroom that you weren't expecting that at all. You have to know how you need to respond to that, not to escalate the situation, but de-escalate the situation. So we don't end up with a kid who threw a pencil down out of frustration getting suspended for 3 days. We can't have that. They're not going to be in our classrooms. So we took it upon ourselves to really train our teachers. How am I doing on time? Okay. The systems at Knight, we have instructional, behavioral, and intervention. And with each system, we have clear expectations built in for support. But I'm going to go back because I want to talk about CC. His transformation has been nothing short of remarkable. For his 8th grade year, CC has maintained a 3.2 GPA. He's been on our football team and he's been in our after-school programs called Blast. CC has had 0 suspensions this year. CC will begin at Southern High School this fall, and he's full of excitement and hope for his future. His district proficiency data, as well as his MAP scores, place him proficient and distinguished. A few days ago, he and I sat down because I wanted to know from CC, what is it about our school that has helped you have such a successful year this year? Talk to me about that, CC. Tell me about that. And so he told me that the first thing he spoke about was relationships. And he said to me, with the constant encouragement and people believing in me, I've been able to stay out of fights and I quit bringing drugs to school. My past gave me a bad name, but no one here gave up on me. People gave me a second chance, and then even after I messed up again, a third chance. I asked him a really tough question at this point. I said, how do you know this is real? How do you know this is real? How do you know people are being authentic with you? And when they tell you they're proud of you and how far you've come, they're being real. And he said to me, I know that it's real because I can see it in their facial expressions. But mostly, I can tell by the way I get treated here. CC isn't aware of PBIS or SRT or RP or MDC or LDC or the Danielson Framework or PLCs or any of the other alphabet soup that we have in education. CC is aware of relationships and how he gets treated. So for us, the biggest thing that will change the trajectory of a student's life are people, not the programs that are in your buildings. Thank you.
Hi, want to kind of piggyback off what I've heard from middle and high school also as well, Indian Trail, Joseph Wood. And PLC process has aligned the systems a lot, just hearing the conversations that's been spoken so far. As well, at Indian Trail, we start off with our high expectations, making sure, again, not just for the students, but for the teachers, okay, for the staff members. Everybody's involved from top down. So first of all, is making sure, again, that we are all trained with the same expectations about what we want our students to learn, how to behave inside and outside the classroom. So we don't actually do PBIS, but we do a form of it, okay? And what I mean by that is we do have lesson plans that we give each classroom to begin the school year, and we teach the expectations and the behavior for common areas. So in the hallway, in the cafeteria, those places where we see a lot of misbehavior. So we make sure the kids have the lesson plans and know what our expectations are. Then from there, we also make videos so that the students will be able to see the expectation, to know what exactly it looks like in and out of those places. And so we have the videos that we broadcast each Friday, and we discuss those things on the morning announcement. So again, it starts from top down when it comes to this situation. I have to be the one to make sure the line is drawn and that everybody knows what that line is. And so it builds with the relationships with our students. They know that we care. If a child doesn't think that you care, you can't teach the child. You can't reach that child. So you have to make sure your set is accessible to the students throughout the day. And so we try to make sure that we do that we have time for our students, and that we have time for the teachers. So when there's an issue going on inside the building with the student or with the system, then we try to address it as a staff to make sure that we're on the same page. So you have to have buy-in not only from the teachers, but also from your student body. And so we do the Survey Monkey. As Dr. Hubbard said, we want to make sure that our kids, they want to work for something. Everybody wants something. And the education part, the kids at that age, they don't understand how valuable it may be to their life. So we have to give them something. So we do Survey Monkeys, and we ask them what would they work for. And so we try to provide those things and make the students, have the students to work for those things. So we do Cardinal Feathers, which is a process where students walking down the hallways or anywhere inside the classroom, if they're exhibiting the right behavior academically or behavior-wise, they get a Cardinal Feather. When they reach a certain number for their classroom, the teacher gives them an incentive. When they reach for a school, I set a goal usually around 300 beginning of the year. When the school reaches that 300 goal, then I give the incentive. And we talk about those things. So again, students know, and my motto is for my teachers and my staff is, we are the doorkeepers. We either open doors for our students to have a successful life, or we close them. So how are we going to reach our students to make sure that they have access to the education purpose and process that they deserve? And so that's what we try to strive to do. So with the Cardinal Feathers, that's one way we do it. Also with the videos, we do it that way also as well. And so we also have grade group challenges. And what this is about, each grade group, we center around academics, attendance, and behavior. And so again, students can reach those different goals as classrooms, and then as the classrooms reach it, we give incentives again for those students for being in attendance. You have to be at school so we can teach you. And so again, we do those things. We try to break down any barriers that we may have for those students to make sure that they have access to the education process. So with the high expectations, also we have a positive RTI process that we have for academics and behavior. So again, trying to be proactive with our students. Students that are brought to the RTI process, we look at those students, we start to track the data on those particular students and try to see what we can do to limit the barriers, break the barriers to the processing ends of their education, to make sure they're in the building. So building positive relationships, that's what primary education is all about. It's the behaviors and the building the positive relationships with those students and the parents involved. So again, we try to do all we can to make sure we do that. We have parent meetings, and we allow the parents again to give us some feedback as far as what they want to meet about. So again, that buy-in is important, not only with the students and the teachers, but also the parents that are involved. So again, making everyone feel that this school is theirs and they belong, and we want you there to learn.
So now we have an opportunity for folks to ask questions of the principals. If you have something that you'd like them to elaborate on, or just something that comes up. There's a gentleman in the back. So hold on a minute.
First, I would like to say, thank you to the principal that stood up here today and kind of giving First, I'd like to say thank you to all the principals that presented just now that were able to kind of give us a snapshot of these innovative policies that they're implementing in their schools to change the odds for youth and families. Then secondly, as a proud graduate of Knight Middle School and Southern High School, I'm sorry to say, thank you for protecting our house.
I just would ask the principals, what opportunities do you have to talk with each other about what's working and to share these great ideas and practices?
We meet, I'm in Region 3, we meet, middle school Region 3 principals meet about 4 times a year in a principal PLC, and we discuss both instructional and behavioral systems at those meetings.
We do the same, and then I'm also the Ford NGL network coach for my 4 schools in my network too. So we also have been to each other's buildings, share about ideas. Most of them are connected to Ford work, but it can be anything.
We have, it's Region 3 and Region 4, but then we have larger meetings, and so I'm with principals from Region 3 and Region 4, and we have conversations as well, and we meet probably 3 or 4 times a year as well.
One of the most beneficial meetings that I'm part of is my SBAT meeting. That's where we have a smaller group of principals that you meet with at your grade level or your level that you have. And so at those meetings, we discuss a lot of things that are positive in our building that can work across the whole spectrum. So at those meetings.
That was going to be my question of, I know that there are different types of PLCs across the district, but how often do all principals get together to share these positive systems that might be working at one school to see if they can be emulated at another? And I appreciate what you said about your SBAT. My principal is a leader of an SBAT, but I was just curious because we've heard so many positive examples. How often principals that maybe at schools that may not have so many positive systems in place get to hear these? And that was a question that I have for you guys.
Again, I meet with my SBAT group, and then I also meet with my PLC. But in terms of anything larger than that, no. It would be informal. I have met with other principals that have asked, can we have a conversation or something like that. But in terms of anything that's formalized, other than my PLC for my region and my SBAT, I'm not real sure of anything that is out there.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that we know each other as high school principals and can share ideas, that we do a lot of that informally through phone calls or email or anything like that. There's nothing formally by the district. We used to be, when I first started, we met as a high school group, everybody together, and would share ideas then, that way.
Do you think that would be beneficial?
Well,
if all the principals were
it's kind of what I would think, because I love the vertical piece of meeting, K to 12. I love that piece, and that's how our regions are set up. My Ford NGL work is within my network of high school principals, but certainly if we had 48 hours in a day and 12 days in a week, then a meeting with all the high school principals would be awesome.
I'm good. Just want to bring up a point for you 3 principals that I'm going to introduce myself to you. My name is Bo. I'm a union rep for Classified. The reason why I'm introducing myself is because I've never met you 3. And there's a reason why I'm assuming why I've never met you 3 is because the way you are treating your students, I'm assuming you're treating your staff the same way. So I've never received a phone call from either one of your schools about any problems my members ever had. So I just want to make a point.
Other questions?
The 3 principals who spoke. A lot of people talk about students who come to them who are behind. How do you all handle children who are off grade level in reading and math to make them feel a part?
Well, we found a product from Pearson, and we were the first ones in the state to use it, called iLit. Kids love technology. To give them a book and ask them to flip pages, they won't do that at all. They won't even crack the book open, but sliding their finger on an iPad and flipping the pages, they'll do it all day long. So we have a little girl that came in 3rd grade reading level and now is up to freshman reading level in 2 years. There's also an ESL program attached to that as well. So we identify our kids early that are coming in way far below grade level and then give that intervention to them for reading. Because that piece goes across all disciplines.
At night, we have an intervention system where we meet with kids at the beginning of the year. We have an entire day set aside for this, and we have, multiple or as many adults as we can get. And we have one-on-one conversations with students about their own personal data. And then we share with them, this is where you're at, and this is where we're going to help you get to. And in order to get you there, we're going to put you into an intervention class. So our students get 2 related arts periods a day. If they need an intervention, one of those related arts periods then becomes their intervention. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we've built into our day another 50 minutes of either enrichment or intervention. And during that, if we have students that are having behavioral issues, they'll go to a behavioral intervention class. Or we can also at that time work with our kids who are having difficulties at that moment in their regular classes for interventions, or that they can go to an enrichment class. So every week it changes based upon what the students' needs are on those Tuesdays and Thursdays. But for the Unified Art or the Related Arts class, they'll stay in that class for a minimum of 12 weeks until we take their temperature again, so to speak, on where their data is in terms of whether they're up to grade level or not in reading and math.
And then in trail, we have win time, which is kind of the same thing that they were just talking about, where during the day we stop the process of teaching new standards, and we go back and reteach to those groups of students who need that standard, talk to them to master it. And so we do that, and also we do a lot of the focus groups throughout the day where we pull students for math and reading to focus on that particular standard or strategy that they don't understand. And then with our RTI process, as I spoke a little bit earlier, we also meet with those kids as far as with their behavior wise, because a lot of times those kids have behavior issues that we have to address to help with the academic part. And so we have focus groups also for the behavior part of it, also trying to meet the whole child.
That is really helpful. And the question I have is, what about the children who aren't at grade level because they're bored and they are not being challenged enough, and that leads to behavioral problems? And I'm wondering what some best practices in the district are around that.
But during the win time also, those students who have met the standard, they are pushed higher. So that also addresses that need for those kids who have mastered the standard. So they are enrichment, they receive enrichment for that time.
Of course, at the high school level, we have career pathways. So we're hoping that makes their learning more relevant by being in a career pathway that would enhance their learning and be a part of all parts of school.
Does the career pathway start also at middle school? Or is it too late to start some kids on the career pathway?
We have those conversations with kids in terms of when we're helping them with high school selection. And so because we're familiar with what high schools do, which programs, when we're having our, because we meet with kids 3 times a year in individual conferences. So when we're having those conferences with the kids about goals and their data and where they are, we're helping them to make those decisions. Southern.
No decision. It's done.
But those are conversations we start. But in terms of the kid having a career pathway in the middle school, there's not.
I think with regards to career pathways, I think in some of the schools we are missing the mark in terms of what we are offering the population. Some of the career pathways are more of a white or a gray collared kind of career pathway, and some are more blue collar. And I think there's some students not being given the opportunity to fully exercise and explore what their interests are. So I would encourage just more vocation.
Speaking of more vocation, if you want to be a Trojan hero, send $20 to Southern High School alumni, and you can help my program next year. And you don't have to be a part of Southern. Anyone in the community can be a Trojan hero and help a kid.
Hi, this is not so much a question. I want to first of all thank the principals who are here with regard to their ideas and how they galvanize staffs and stuff to do that. But I just also want to put out the notion, because I don't want it to be the thing that is operative in the room, that all these kinds of great ideas don't always necessarily come from principals, and that student-led, student-involved, teacher-led, teacher-involved initiatives are all over the place, and we should not be looking only to principals and great principals to solve all those problems.
Just by saying there's not been any initiative at Knight Middle School that was not coming from all of the adults in our building coming together and agreeing upon that. And in fact, when I first got there, we started with small groups of students and asking the students, what do you want your school to look like? If you could build your school from the ground up, tell me what it would look like. We started there, then we moved to the adults, and then decisions were made by our leadership team. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It has to start with at the grassroots effort, which is your students and parents.
Obviously our house, I tell them all the time, it doesn't say Bryce Hibbard across the building. You know, this is our house. So I have a principal's advisory group where I meet with kids every week. We've changed a lot of policies at Southern because of what the kids talked about and what they needed. Our PBIS group, totally, I'm involved, but are totally led by teachers, and they do an awesome job of doing all those pieces. So I appreciate your comments, and they're totally involved at the stuff that we're doing.
I have one question. I understand that we're talking within the school setting, but how does this affect bus drivers and students on a school bus? Because we don't have that same setting that you all have in the classroom, in the school, and in the cafeteria. We have bus drivers here that face difficulties every single day, and they don't have an opening or a way out. So the plan that Southern, TT9, and Indian Trail represent, do you all implement that on the school bus as well as you do inside the school? Because I don't have your area that I manage. I have other areas, so therefore, what are we explaining to other areas and other schools to be able to get control on a school bus? Because we're very limited with what we deal with on a daily basis. So we're looking for our assistant soups, our principals, and our APs to help us to be able to maintain discipline on a school bus. And that's what we're facing over here on this side of the room.
Yeah, our PBIS structure, the way that we have videos, much like Indian Trail, where we talk about appropriate bus behavior, how to get on, how to get off, what's inappropriate. And we show the video to the kids and have conversations in the advisory. That's one of those at the beginning of the year, and each trimester change, we go through those again with every kid in the school. So they know the expectations at our house on the bus, that if Dad has to pull the car over, then it's not going to go well. So those kind of conversations.
And that would be true at night as well. We teach the expectations for bus behavior. And I think that with your area, you all seem to collaborate together within your schools, but maybe other area districts are not doing the same thing. So that's why you are so successful, because you have that unity within your area, but maybe that's not coming across with the entire district. And I think that clarity and consistency is what we're looking for.
Well, and this is a great transition, because what the principals are saying is that it's a group effort, right? So the reason that all of you are in the room and you represent different stakeholder groups is because the solution lies within us to actually problem solve about how we create a system And the bus is an extension of school, and behavior, we have to have high expectations. So this is really a community effort. There is an initiative called By All Means that the mayor is involved in. How do you bring Health and Human Services to really support the needs of kids so they have the basic needs that they need met so that they can be successful learners and successful citizens. So there's a lot going on. And when we were at the convening of 6 different districts, Ron Heifetz, Dr. Heifetz spoke, and he talked about the difference between a technical problem and an adaptive challenge. And what we're facing is an adaptive challenge. How do you rally people and how do you change a mindset about where we spend our energy? And it's going to involve all of us, so that's exactly right. So I want to thank everybody for being here and remind you that the kind of things in a system design that Jonathan Bryce, who used to be in Baltimore City, he's no longer there, said, the importance of training. And the bus drivers talked about the importance of training and strategies and information. But then the importance of monitoring. Is the system that we designed working, and where do we need to tweak the system to get it to work better? Then he talked about a clear and consistent code of conduct. And I agree with, I think it's Maria, right? Maria, is that you're not going to get absolute, but you can get a closer range so there's not that great variability so that students understand. He talked about positive behavior intervention support, PBIS, which we have in 104, 108 schools. 107, okay? And he talked about relationships, the importance of building relationships. We talked about one of the challenges is that when you have a shortage of bus drivers and there are different bus drivers on buses, hard to build relationships. When people are transferring in the school year, hard to build relationships. But that's something that we have to overcome. And then student support teams. What is the intervention that is happening for individual students and for schools, and how is that being monitored to ensure that it's happening as you develop it? So again, the big picture is, how do we create a system together where we spend, this represents 80% of our investment of time, resources, and energy into the proactive. How do we help kids learn what it feels like, what it looks like to behave appropriately in Jefferson County Public Schools, to steal from Kathy. And so part of that includes, and we talked about it, PBIS, restorative practices, the Compassionate Schools Project. We'll have 15 schools on board with that. All of the supports that are Louisville linked and all the strategies in trauma-informed care. Transition centers, we talked about, those are alternative seats within a school that used effectively can provide an alternative for students. We put APs on the elementary level for AP principal or elementary principals. I'm trying to imagine a world without APs on the elementary level. And the reason we put APs on the elementary level was so that teachers can teach and counselors can counsel. Because counselors were being pulled away from the important support work that they do to do other things. And we want them to be able to support our students. And then the Watchdog program, for those of you that are involved in the community in the Watchdog program, being role models in our school, fits in this 80% of where we can spend our time and our energy. And the flash dads who greeted students as they came into school, that fits in all the proactive things. Then we know that this line, again, of a consistent, clear line of what is inappropriate, that when somebody chooses an inappropriate behavior, how do you teach from that and how do you restore that so that they don't choose it again? And then, of course, we do have the very top tier of our kids that need the most support. So we do have alternative schools. And we do have alternative schools that have to have a focus on learning in spite of them being an alternative school. And I know James Peden was here from Phoenix, and we have Liberty, and we have lots of alternative schools and ways to reach kids. So there's lots going on, but that's where we want to get to. So designing this system. So let me end by again thanking Dr. Averett and Dr. Bargione for walking us through the supports that are in place and what we're working to do to make sure that we're supporting our students. Then Dr. Dina Dossett who told us about the data, and we want to be absolutely transparent with data all the time. The data of the referrals represents 26% of our kids. That means 74% of our kids don't have a referral. So we're talking about the 26% that do. And of course, remember Dina said that 83% of those are minor. So she put everything in a context for us. And then we talked about, who is next? Dr. Marshall talked about the code of conduct. And the revisions for the code of conduct are not about lessening consequences. It's about making it clear and consistent and fair and equitable across the district. And then, of course, I want to thank our superstar principals who ended this exactly as it should have been. Principal Hibbards, Principal Gibbs, and Principal Wood from Indian Trail. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So you modeled. So now all we have to do is bring this to scale, what they described for a system. So stay tuned. This is the beginning of a conversation of how we can engage all of you in creating a system that supports all of our students. So thank you for your time. And we will keep all of, Jonathan, do we have email addresses? Yes. We have email addresses, so you will definitely be in the loop. So thank you again.